industry updates and what's hot topic and top of mind. Paul.
Good morning. Can you all hear me okay? I'm having some connection issues, I think. Can I get a thumbs up from you, Deb?
Yeah, you're okay.
Okay, well, good morning, everybody. Looks like we've got another good session this morning. The participation level is really awesome to see. Thank you all for chiming in each week. We will continue to have these moving forward on Wednesday from 7:30 to say 9-ish, around that time period. So please stay tuned in and get into that chat box like Deb had mentioned. These meetings are serving or showing to be a value add. So let's keep it going. Good energy. Let's get the questions out. Thank you for the subject matter experts for coming in this morning. We do have later on in the month the regularly scheduled safety member forum where I'm going to try and bring in OSHA. So OSHA can discuss or we can get some questions answered from OSHA on what their kind of practices are and how they're doing their say code enforcement. So please stay chimed in. And having said that, good morning to everybody. Thank you for joining in once again, and I'm going to pass it now over to Marilyn Stansbury.
Thanks, Paul.
Good morning. I have the pleasure of introducing who our subject matter experts and panelists are, and really appreciate everyone joining in and asking questions. First, we have Sam Gluck. Sam is the Vice President at APCO, and Sam is an electrical contractor, an electrician, an IEC alumni, and also a member of the IECRM Board of Directors. And Sam has worked with our Veterans Committee for a number of years, and now also serves on our Diversity and Inclusion Committee. So really excited to hear about Sam's experience and his perspective on the industry right now. Also joining us is Sam Cooke. We have two Sams on the call today. Sam, thank you so much for joining us. Sam is with Federated. He's the district marketing manager for Federated here in Colorado. And Federated is an IEC national partner and has been working with a number of our chapters as well as contractors throughout the country. And we're looking forward to hearing what Sam has to share from a risk management standpoint and some of the things that Federated has been working on throughout this COVID crisis and perspective from the overall industry. Kristin White joins us again. Kristin, you have been so incredibly valuable to us throughout this series of member forums. Kristin is an attorney with Fisher & Phillips and has just brought us great knowledge and expertise on labor and employment issues, and whatever the policy of the day or the policy of the week has been, she has really been keeping on top of it and is backed by just some great resources that Fisher Phillips has been providing again throughout this pandemic. Also on the call today is Jay Hicks. Jay Hicks is our lobbyist with Hicks & Associates. We're going to be doing a little special segment towards the end of the program today and giving a little bit of update on government relations, legislative expectations as they prepare to return, and just giving us again some additional updates, but be thinking about the things that have impacted you, that impact policy, because Jay and I are going to collect those as we begin to emerge and get the industry fully back in business. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Deb so that she can begin our questions of our subject matter experts. And thank you again for being on the call.
Thanks, Marilyn. Again, welcome everyone. I'm hoping you can hear me well enough. I just switched to the phone to kind of help with bandwidth problems for my audio. What we want to do is really get into what is top of mind. We're going to begin with Sam and talk about now that we are beyond the curve, or we are still watching that curve continue to flatten and moving beyond it. I'd like each of you to just introduce yourselves and talk about what is really in your thoughts and considerations this week, since it seems to change so much. And beginning with the contractor perspective, Sam, tell us a little bit about you and what you're thinking about. I heard that you had one of the most interesting weeks of your career in the business, and I'd love for you to share that with all of us this morning.
Sure. Good morning, everybody. At the end of the day, this is something we're in uncharted territory here. So you don't necessarily know where the wind's going to blow you, but you might as well just set your sails up and go. First and foremost is employee safety, without question. We don't want anyone with a compromised immune system to have contracted this through someone that works for you or works with you, works around you. So safety is paramount. So we've been making sure that we're complying with all of our clients' protocol and what the government mandates for safe social distancing and mask use. We're providing masks and hand sanitizers for everyone. Quite a few of our clients have implemented their own methods of procedure and standard operating procedures that have changed as well, where they're taking temperatures and ensuring that that you're symptom free before you go into their facility, which is great too. So, and we're self-policing, which is helpful. If you're sick, stay home. We don't want it to go any further. As far as opportunities, we have had contractors that we've not done a lot of business with yet, but who are also looking for really good long-term partners, industry partners. And I go back to the relationship is the single most important thing in business. It may not be your specialty, but you may know someone whose specialty it is. And in that regard, we had a couple of projects that got upended. Some restaurant work that was about to begin that the plug got pulled on. And as a result of that, I started reaching out to former industry partners that we've worked with over the years in former lives and former positions at former companies as well. And it just said, how you doing, how you weathering this storm? And it's been phenomenal. The feedback has been, hey, I was just about to reach out, or thank you for your timing was impeccable. We're working on a project. And so I think if you're able to instead of turtling up and being fearful, if you can actually reach out to industry partners or relationships that you've had in the past or relationships that you would like to start, it's a great time to do that. We have had very good success, and we're pretty blessed all the way around to have some new relationships there.
Okay, Sam, thank you. We'll be back to you with some specific questions, but I also want to comment on the sailing analogy. I really appreciate it, being a sailor myself, and now in dry dock and landlocked Colorado. I thought that just struck a nice chord with me this morning. And so let's go on to Kristin. Kristin, just a quick overview of what's top of mind for you this week. You have been so consistent and knowledgeable as a voice for us throughout this whole experience. So what are you thinking about right now?
Yeah, thanks, Deb. I appreciate that nice introduction. Appreciate the opportunity to be here with you all throughout what we've been going through here. So, it's really been the back to business issues that a lot of you are dealing with, from, taking temperatures and getting down into the logistics of what that looks like. The other piece we've been looking at, for a lot of clients is, if they can't supply the PPE, then what does that look like? Or if something's not working right, how do they try to maintain the safest workforce? It's like what Sam was mentioning, employee safety is key here. And, and for us, we're obviously looking at it from the liability side. And, our recommendation has been, if the CDC says it's a recommendation, you want to be treating it like a requirement right now, because that's what we're seeing in the lawsuits that have been filed, is that they're claiming the employers were not following, guidance or recommendations, which typically would mean, okay, well, that's not a requirement we have to follow. But here, I think the bar has been raised. And so from the employee safety side and an exposure side, the way to protect yourself from liability and from lawsuits is to be following those recommendations. So that's really, what's really been top of mind for us, from a worker safety and, liability side on getting back to work is, how do you comply with, things that are requirements and things that are only recommendations, but really trying to implement those at not just your work sites, but now at your offices, within Colorado.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. And we're going to drill down into that a little bit further in a few minutes. So Sam Cooke, welcome to the IECRM Member Forum. It's good to have you making your debut here as one of our subject matter experts. And what is top of mind for you right now? This is so unprecedented.
Yeah, thanks, Deborah. I'm really excited to be here. I'm fortunate to lead the 9 marketing reps at Federated who work around the state and call on all of you guys and serve your businesses as your insurance advisor. And so I'm excited to be here this morning. As far as what's on top of mind, echoing what both Sam and Kristin said, it's about, how can we keep people safe first, right? Safety and risk management absolutely has to come first, and it's a state of mind and it's a culture in your organizations. So how can we support that message? How can we be your insurance partner and provide resources? And then how can we be proactive in avoiding issues moving forward? What's really on top of my mind is as we get back to work, as we ramp up to full speed, what does that look like? Making sure we're not taking shortcuts, making sure we are really drilling down on our due diligence with bringing people back into the workplace, getting people back into your customers' homes and businesses, and making sure we're slowing down to speed up, if you will, and doing things right the first time. So
slowing down to speed up, I like that.
There will absolutely be a rush to get back out there and do this work and get people back into the office and back into trucks. And we know when we rush, it causes issues. And so making sure that my reps and myself are alongside you guys, providing resources, reminding you of these things so that we can go back to work safely, efficiently, and effectively.
Thank you, Sam. I think this whole return to work strategy and the policies that need to be developed and deployed, implemented well to ensure physical safety for workers who are returning from stay-at-home or furloughs is absolutely vital. And actually, what is happening in the area of some of these lawsuits that are being filed by employees or employee groups due to the fact that they are still feeling they're at risk. So Sam Gluck, in the environment that you are facing, what are you hearing? What are you seeing? In some respects, what are you feeling about worker confidence and how they're starting to adapt to moving toward what Sam Cooke said, moving more slowly to speed things up for going forward?
Well, for us, what we do is we ask them in the field, what do you need? And you involve them in the conversation. And how do you how do you overcome fear? Well, you talk about it, you inquire, what do you need to overcome that? And you work through it together. You have a conversation, does that make sense, or does that prohibit or inhibit or slow down the process? Of course, efficiency is going to be decreased. And as an owner, you have to recognize that. You can't bury your head in the sand. At no point does safety allowed to be compromised. You can't do it. You've seen it firsthand up at JBS Swift in Greeley, where you've got a corporation that wants to keep cranking and employees that feel as though they're working shoulder to shoulder and they feel like they're being compromised and that they're just next up. Whoever, they're working side by side, and some of these guys are getting sick and they're not being able to, they're afraid to go back to work. We don't want to have that culture in our group. Fortunately, we don't have that in our group either, but we do have to work side by side in some capacity. If we're mounting electrical gear or if we're running large conduit and conduit racks, we're going to be in close proximity. So we have those conversations with our guys. What do you need? What do you need to do your work competently and have the confidence that you need to be safe? And we're having that conversation with our clients and our employees.
So it's kind of on both ends of your stakeholder spectrum. And it sounds like communication about these issues is absolutely essential. We've talked about communicating reliably and consistently and frequently throughout these member forums, and that seems to be one of the ways in which you can increase a certain amount of confidence and a sense of safety for your people, as well as your clients. There are legal aspects to this as well, though, that I think create certain degree of liability, probably a high degree of liability. And Kristin, can you now weave us into that a little bit?
Sure. You know, and I think Sam makes a really good point about talking to the workers in the field, because, you know, the way issues are going to come up on the legal side is typically going to be a complaint. You know, I mean, there's too many employers. I mean, everybody right now is having to institute, you know, face mask and PPE and temperature taking. So, you know, you take OSHA and the CDPHE, they're not going to get everywhere. And so it really becomes focused on complaints. And so that's really where the resources are going to go, are those, you know, employers that receive complaints from their employees that they're not doing the right thing. And that's, you know, same where we see lawsuits from is complaints. So I think that's a really good point on talking to the workers in the field to say, you know, are you getting what you need? Is this working? If it's not, getting their input on what they need. Because yeah, really from the liability side, I mean, you know, you've got to be in Colorado now that we have a PHO that's come out. You just want to, you know, be making sure that you're checking off those boxes, you know, on those requirements as far as, you know, the disinfecting that's happening every day, the temperature taking, you know, avoiding the gatherings of more than 10, you know, making sure that you're, you know, accommodating vulnerable individuals. That might be the other, from the legal side, I'd point out is that, you know, there's now a direct order in the PHO that you have to accommodate vulnerable individuals. So, you know, usually under the ADA, that's one of those analysis that someone raises a concern to you that they need an accommodation. You have a conversation. Can we accommodate? Can we not? What does this look like? Well, now there's an order out there that you have to accommodate them. You know, and there's also the definition of what vulnerable means, which is a little longer than what it was before. So, you know, from the liability side, I guess those would be the things I'd say to keep in mind is that now, you know, you've got to figure out, it may be that person has to sit at home, the vulnerable individual, a little bit longer than you would want them to. So just keep that in mind as you're, you know, as Sam said, you're talking to the employees and your workers about what they need, that you've got some mandates that you have to be providing certain things, and you've got to be accommodating, you know, requests.
Fisher Phillips has developed a fairly excellent, if not really excellent, checklist. Why don't you talk about that tool a little bit, Kristin? And we're going to make sure that all of you have the link to access it, because it really is very comprehensive.
Yeah, so I actually had pulled it up here this morning. So we have on our website, which is just the main fisherphillips.com, it's an FAQ document for, let me pull that back up here, an FAQ document for back to business, for getting back to business. And what we tried to do was highlight all areas of law and what you may have to deal with going back to work. So of course, one section of that's workplace safety, but another is your HR considerations, and that goes into the reasonable accommodations, remote work, you know, paid sick leave, because now we have the new or amended paid sick leave here in Colorado, where we went from, you know, which I guess it still isn't for construction, so you all probably aren't having to worry about that. Goes into wage and hour issues. Are you paying people for the time that you're taking temperatures? If you're not, something to consider that could run into a wage and hour issue, depending on how you're doing it and how long it's taking. We get into unemployment comp, benefits, immigration issues, and even, you know, touching on the wrongful death cases. So we really tried to think about, it's more of an issue spotting type of document that, you know, takes you through, you know, are there issues with going back to work that we haven't yet thought of? So we try to make sure that we've addressed those, or at least raised them for you, giving you some things to think about. Some of them have, you know, here's how to handle it. Others may just be more, here's issues you need to talk about. But we tried to cover from the legal side, all the issues we could think that may arise as you're going back to work and, trying to ramp up as, because your job sites have probably been going, most of them. So as you're ramping up, looking to be more normal work.
Yeah, well, a navigational tool for sure that I think is essential, probably will continue to evolve as new things are learned and developed and issues emerge. I don't know about the rest of you, but I think it's pretty common and normal to feel a little confused by how rapidly this is changing. And Sam Cooke, why don't you, from your perspective, talk a little bit about the kinds of things that can and should be looked at. I know one thing a couple of things, estate planning seems to be increasing, workers' comp or other risk management and risk mitigation strategies seem to be coming into play. And as an insurance provider, you've got to be looking at this almost 24/7.
Yeah, absolutely. I can say we are busier now than probably ever before, both from an activity standpoint, pursuing new business. People have time to chat with us right now, which is nice. But there's also a lot of people looking at their fixed expenses. We're one place where people can get some relief immediately. So let me start from the top here. What is going really quickly? You mentioned the estate planning side. We partner with a group of excellent business succession and estate planning attorneys. And unfortunately, people are thinking about their own mortality and morbidity right now. And they might have time to dig into that. So we've partnered with a estate planning group out of Cherry Creek. They've been working with us for about 10 years. Normally, Federated gets 2 days per quarter, back to back, where we have 8 slots to bring clients in for consultations, to establish wills, trust, powers of attorney, especially on the medical directive side right now is generating the interest there. But instead of having 2 days a quarter and a 60-day lead time, with about 3 to 4 days and a complete fact finder, people have access via Zoom or Skype or WebEx to our attorney group, which has been awesome. The other thing that we see a large increase in, and I bet some of you are feeling this as well, is the bonding side, surety. Depending on what happens with the economy, especially the municipalities, people want to make sure they pay for a job once, and they're willing to pay for the cost of a performance or maintenance bond to ensure that work is done on time, correctly, and it's only paid for once. And so large influx of bid bonds and performance bonds going out the door, which is a good thing. From a workers' comp perspective, people are really just looking for resources, right? I would say the biggest question we get, and maybe we're going to get into this later, is just relative to the PPP, and how payrolls are affected and what it's going to mean for audits. So I did get some direction, and Marilyn, I'll just share this with you so you can get it out to everybody. We're just encouraging our clients and prospects to take really diligent, payroll recording, what people are doing, what are their actual duties right now. Are they furloughed? Are they still being paid although they're not working? Are they working solely from home? That will allow us on the back end of this to go in and do our workers' comp audits and our liability audits for those who rate with payroll, and accurately charge premium based on where people are and what they're doing and what those inherent risks are. The last thing I'll mention that's, again, kind of top of mind is as people are working from home who normally aren't, just those cybersecurity risks. There's always risks working on your own device or working on public Wi-Fi. But the biggest thing we've seen an influx in is phishing attacks. Federated, all 2,700 of our employees have gone through phishing prevention training, because those attacks are at an all-time high because they know people are home and maybe not dialed into their normal environment. So lots to talk about on the cybersecurity side and the insurance portion of that, but we've got a lot of resources out there that we can share.
Just want to thank you, Sam. I want to remind you, if you have a specific question, don't hesitate to submit it via the chat function. If you have a comment you'd like to share or some experience that you've had recently that ties into this, just raise your hand or shoot a note through chat, and we'll make sure that we get that heard and discuss somewhat. I think we're all talking about new habits, having to form new ways of behaving and working, especially as you integrate workers back into the office or to the work site, among employees who have been there all the time as essential. How is that? Is there any guidance any of the three of you have in your minds and in your disciplines, with Sam Gluck being the worksite contractor who has to think about this and maybe talk about what he's thinking about with us? Any thoughts? Anything either of you want to jump in and mention? Or Sam Gluck, you yourself?
Honestly, we're really focusing on putting the right people on the right job. So the real detail-minded people, you need to be doing the detail-oriented work. And Marilyn and I had an opportunity to visit about this yesterday afternoon, and I'm not the super detail-oriented spreadsheet guru. That's not me. And as such, we know that our president, Sarah Jensen, has a master's in accounting from DU. That is her forte, and that's what she does so well. So that's where we make sure that it's analogous to a football lineman trying to run the ball. It doesn't work, right? So running back the way you use it, and the right tool for the right job. And so that's what we've really focused on our hyper-focused on is making sure that, and finding the people with the new talents too, right? So you might have an apprentice in training or a young journeyman who expresses an interest in learning this skill set. Well, now's the perfect time to teach them, right? So you can have a follow-up with your succession plan. You can have a follow-up with integrated training, and now's the time to do that. But you can definitely find the right skill set and the right people to match that. That's what we've also been utilizing that as well. So that's my experience.
Kristin, how are you guys looking at it from new habits being formed and behavior change, which all gets right down to what's legally required and what you can be liable for?
Yeah, I mean, I think, from the safety perspective, we're seeing a lot of good behaviors. I mean, I think, so many employers right now, are going above and beyond. As I talked about, you got recommendations, you have some requirements, and people really want to do the right thing. They really want to make their employees as safe as possible. And so, we're seeing a lot of good behaviors on that side, but they want to do the extra steps. They are asking us, for checklists and how do we make sure this is being done? And, how do we deal with employees who may not want to? I mean, we've run into that a little bit. We've talked on this forum about the work refusal issue. Some of the questions are, what if an employee doesn't want to wear a mask? What if he doesn't want to wear the gloves? What if he's not following social distancing? And then, unfortunately, you go back to your disciplinary policies if that becomes, the issue, because these are, the new normal, as we're all saying. So, I think we're seeing the emphasis on safety, and, people want to be leading in this area. And, people aren't just asking, what do I have to do to get by? They want to be, they want to be at the forefront and be doing everything they can. So that's been good to see.
Hypervigilant rather than just doing the bare minimum,
right?
Is, I hear, is just as logically as possible. I mean, it's just totally logical. Sam Cooke, thoughts?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, over communicating, and it's hard to over communicate, and this goes along with what Kristin was saying, but assuming absolutely nothing. Sending a quick response to those emails just to say like, yep, I got it. And making sure that everybody's on the same page, that nothing gets lost in translation, and as well as accountability, right?
Yeah.
Doing what you say you're going to do when you're going to do it, and I'm staying on top of all of our reps, and we're talking daily, and we're holding each other accountable.
Very important in that also, woven in that is the need to tell them what you did and remind them again what you're going to continue to do, and following through and repeating yourself. You cannot do it frequently enough. And I know, Marilyn, you had something you wanted to jump in about in terms of essential and new habits. Please.
Yeah, I just wanted to share, just from our own team's perspective, we have had a couple of people that have been holding down the fort, if you will, taking turns being in the office. And they have now developed a whole new set of habits and behaviors that are just, it's I don't remember now what the research says of once you do something a certain number of times, but it's just part of their regular schedule now to use a wipe to open something, or to, to automatically put their mask on if they're walking outside of their office, and other things that we have put in place. And as we begin to put return to work, new policies and strategies in place, one of the things that we've realized is that, people have been away from each other for 30 or 60 days now, and it's really easy to come into the office and not be sensitive to what those new standards and habits are. So for us, as we return to a 50% in the workplace environment, we've got those two people that have developed new habits, helping to form new habits for the other people coming in. And we're doing it one at a time, so that it's not everybody half returns on one day and half returns the next day. We're really sort of rolling that in and integrating people back in, so that we have the opportunity for everybody to be able to follow these new protocols and continue the habit development. And I just two other people are on the phone, Holly and Paul from our office. They've just done an amazing job. And our entire team has done an amazing job staying at home and staying well. And, at the end of the day, that's the bottom line, is that no one wants to be sick. No one wants to get this virus. No one wants to spread it to someone else. And I've just really appreciated everyone who has come with that approach, with that mindset. But I have noticed that it's really easy to when you get back in a small group, it's really easy to forget, oh yeah, I'm supposed to keep 6 to 10 feet away from you. I have to make sure I just touched that, or how can I avoid touching something? So I just wanted to comment on the development of new behaviors and new habits, and how we support each other. And to Sam's point, how we help in a very positive way to educate and keep each other accountable.
Yeah, so important. I'm trying to vaguely recall here what that number is, that frequency factor. And it kind of goes back to the days when we were trying to institute safe seatbelt laws, seatbelt behavior. I think, as I recall, you have to repeat a behavior 27 times before it starts to become habit. Now, I may not be totally accurate on that number, but it is kind of that level of frequency. And so we're in for some behavior reinforcement and repetition on social distancing, and putting that mask on, and maybe even donning gloves. So I'd like to just move really quickly over to talk a little bit about the payroll protection program and how you all are experiencing that, if you have been qualified. I know, Sam Gluck, you were an initial recipient. And so what are you learning? We've talked a little bit about the importance of documentation in terms of your compliance. What is the knowledge that you've gained that you could share with your fellow contractors and partners who are not yet receiving those funds?
I would say that due diligence is very important. And again, having the right person performing the detail is absolutely required. You have to dot your I's and cross your T's, and you do not want someone that isn't competent performing that. We submitted for and received the SBA's Triple P as a means of ensuring that our employees would have a paycheck so that they can take care of their families. They are our company, they are our backbone, and whether we're able to have that forgiven or not, it doesn't really matter at that point. It's really just taking care of the people that are helping build the company successfully. As far as ensuring that 75% of that goes toward payroll, I think is what the mandate is at a minimum. And I think that's pretty important that whoever is taking care of the HR or the payroll knows that and adheres to that. There are also, try and read a little bit every day, and the snippet is that any loans that were $2 million or greater will have a complete and full audit performed as a result of that to ensure that the money isn't going to the wrong places or being misappropriated or misused. That's pretty important because it is, after all of our money in the form of tax dollars that are being used to do this. So it is important it's being used correctly.
Sam Cooke, it's a month old. What have you and are you experiencing? Did we lose Sam? Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you. I think
Yeah?
we did lose Sam.
Okay. Well, Kristin, then let's bounce this over to you then. A specific question that we've had this week about the PPP is that those funds impact the distribution of bonuses and salary increases. And can companies do that, provide bonuses, pay salary increases if they are receiving the PPP funding? Are they encouraged to do so? And what kind of guidance would you have for employers, especially in the construction sector?
Yeah, and and the hard part was, I think when we talked 2 weeks ago, we were hoping we would have more guidance on the forgiveness part, because that's really where these questions drive, is if I do this, is it going to be forgiven? And we still don't have that guidance. And so that's been a little frustrating. I think, I see Pete's on the phone. He's probably had the same frustration I've had, is how do you advise, clients when we're not getting guidance on it? So, from the bonuses, we think that that's likely to be covered. Again, it's still a kind of a likely, and again, with salary increases, I mean, that's part of the forgiveness piece, is that if you can get employees back up to where they were before, or have everyone on the payroll for the forgiveness piece. So, I don't, if Pete's on here, if he's got any different thoughts, I didn't, welcome that, because I'm sure he's dealing with it as well, but I don't see any problem with those two issues. But again, we're assuming bonuses are going to be covered, and yet they haven't yet come out with that. But I don't see the problem with salary increases, because that is part of, to get your forgiveness, if you can get people back to where they were. I think it's pre-February, the February date. Then that's a good thing. And, making sure that this is the employees below 100,000 is what we're looking at on that forgiveness piece.
Pete, did you want to add anything to that?
Sure, I'm happy to. Exactly what Kristin said, not to reiterate it, but we're waiting on that additional guidance. Hasn't come. We're beginning to wonder if it's going to come in time before the 8 weeks is up, or if this is a play that they're going to make up some of these rules as we go. The biggest thing that I've been dealing with this past week has been this: should I have received my PPP loan, or should I not have applied for it, and should I be refunding it back to the government? We have a couple articles out on our website kind of addressing that, kind of some documents on maybe what you should say or plan on saying, or put together a document for your board minutes and that kind of stuff. And I'm sure Kristin has some advice on that as well, is, hey, this is what we need to do to potentially defend ourselves when the government comes back at us for should we have taken this loan or not. So it is a very fluid situation. Wish I had a much better answer on the wage increases and the bonuses. Bonuses more importantly than the wage increases. I think that's very justifiable. So unfortunately, we'll be waiting to see what the rules are after the game's been played.
Thanks, Pete. With about a little over 15 minutes left in the conversation, I'd like to bring Jay Hicks now in to talk about a few things government relations-wise. This morning it would have been the last Government Relations Committee meeting we would have had before the end of the Colorado legislative session. So Jay, we know that the pandemic has delayed the session this year. We know the legislature is scheduled to reconvene on May 18, which is a little over a week or so from now. So what can you tell us about what to expect in the now shortened session upcoming? Jay, I think you're on mute. Let me make sure he's still here.
Yes, he is.
Yep. Jay, yeah, he's here. Jay Hicks. Well, we'll have to come back to that maybe.
Well, I can just say really
Marilyn,
quickly.
you can, yeah.
Yeah, I'll say really quickly, and maybe Jay can chime in. He may be having audio issues. So the legislature is planning to return on May 18th. As we've talked about in a couple of our calls, we have worked very closely with Dora along the way to try to address, let's see, Jay is texting. Oh, he says he's muted. Can we unmute him on our end?
See. Paul, can you do that?
I can. Give me just one moment.
Okay.
Thank you. Because it looks like he's unmuted from my end. Jay, it's not like us to have silence when we're asking you to talk.
Okay. All right. Let me resend him the link and see if we can get him unmuted, and I'll let you move to the next section of the program while we're.
Okay. While we're waiting, then I think let's talk a little bit about relationships, corporate culture, and communication. We have touched on this a little bit, but I'd love to hear from any of you if you're doing anything special, different in terms of relationship reinforcement and cultivation, as well as appreciation. I know, Sam, this is something that you talked about earlier in the session. Is there anything you're doing different, or where you've spotted new opportunities for talking to and keeping relationships healthy with partners, vendors, customers?
Absolutely, all of the above. Actually, it's everyone is suffering in this pandemic. It may not have the parity of the levels of suffering may not be the same. There are some restaurants, hospitality, hotels that are completely shuttered. There are others that are flourishing. Everyone is suffering to some degree, but having a little bit of empathy for the folks that are suffering and having all of that in common is a good talking point to get things started with your vendors and your clients. And and for me, it's a pre-construction conversation. I can have a talk with general contractors or pre-con folks or design build. It's a much more design build friendly environment right now. And that's kind of the niche that I really enjoy because it's a conceptual thing. It's how can we work together to build this and make this better for everyone? And for me, that is reaching out to vendors who are happy to do that and reaching out with clients and other potential clients that are willing to do that. You really see who's willing to take that risk. And again, sometimes it is a risk when you don't know if your efforts and time are going to be, it's not really wasted, but are going to come to fruition through a project, a mutual project together, or have that opportunity. Again, you can just plant seeds. It might be 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road when your coworkers or industry partners are in a position where you can have your paths cross again and the stars align so you can actually build something together. Don't look at this as an opportunity wasted for sure. Plant seeds and pull weeds.
Yeah, I wanted to jump on that a little bit and just say that really it is our frontline worker that is making the most adjustments. We all have to make adjustments as leaders in our organizations, but our frontline is the ones that have had to move their offices to home. They've had to deal with family issues and things like that. So not just, and going to what Deb was saying, to create habits. One of the best ways to create a habit is also to incentivize that and point it out and recognize individuals who are leading the way in that, right? So Sam was saying, put the right person in the right place. You know, that's so crucial. And if you have the right person in the right place, keep them there by incentivizing them to lead other people in their tracks, in their paths. So incentivizing and recognizing and calling out good safety practices amongst your team as well. You can't just be, you're not doing this, you're not doing that, please sign this piece of paper. It's incentivizing to say, hey, look, you are leading the way on trying to create an ethic or a standard. So incentivization of your team is really important. So I just wanted to throw that in there because really it's our front line that have had to make a lot of these really hard adjustments, and whether they're scared to come in or they're don't believe in the protocols and this, that, and the other, you know, yeah, there's definitely, you know, conversations and strategies on being able to get compliance, but at the same time, if you have people that are leading, let's point them out.
Yeah, the greatest antidote to fear is care, concern, and constant communication. You know, you can't oversell that. It's really, really critical. And I think that, as Sam referenced, this is an opportunity for all of us to become more greatly aware of how important these relationships are and how important and enhanced caretaking of those relationships is right now, and actually is under any circumstances. It gives us that opportunity to really do more of a high touch where at all possible. I understand we have Jay back, and so Jay, and we have Sam back too. Hi, Sam. Jay, I'd like to get to the government relations question and have you kind of give us a little bit of insight as to what we can expect in the now shortened Colorado legislative session as it goes forward.
So hopefully you can hear me now. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can hear you.
All right, good. All right. See, that's amazing. Little codes work. So as I was mentioning, today is the last day of what they normally would be the session. So today would be your 24-hour workday. At midnight tonight they would end. But because of the Supreme Court decision to stay, we have just over 50 days that have been added to the clock. And as you mentioned, May 18th is the day they're going to come back. Now, with that, they are still in considerations of how they're going to approach the rest of the session. There's been conversations and talks about certain bills. Obviously, the constitutional mandate is to pass the budget, the School Finance Act, and the Rule Review Bill, right? So those are the things that are the necessary constitutional mandates. And with the state, right now is looking to have a forecast, I think on May 12th of the budget, and what the state will look like. Right now, they are trying to focus most of their attention on what is going to be left to spend and what cuts are going to be made. With that, we are preparing. Most bills are going to be relooked at if they have a cost. There may be a list of bills that may, obviously anything that is pandemic related is going to get special consideration. One of the things that's very interesting is the federal government has given Colorado money, but that money comes with some strings and can only be spent on certain things. And one of the things that it cannot be spent on is trying to make up for the loss in general fund. Right now, I think Colorado is preparing for a $3 billion shortfall because of the last few months. And that's just for this fiscal year, and then potentially another $3 or $4 billion for the next fiscal year. What does that mean for business? What that means is that there's going to be a lot of locals, and we saw this prior, looking for ways to make up funding to continue their budgets. And whether or not we see the municipalities and or the state moving things, we had a number of bills that were introduced in the recession last time that tried to balance the budget and took some incentives away. And hurt a lot of businesses and a lot of things that they were used to having. So we probably will see some of that coming forward. I don't think we'll see it in this session too much, but definitely next session, and trying to move to actually balance that budget. What is going to be stifled is the general process of how what we're normally used to at the Capitol of testimony and having people come down and testify. That is right now under consideration and discussion because of the safety and maintaining distance in 10 people. We have 100 legislators that sit in a room, and so how are they going to maintain distance, still be able to vote, still be able to have committee hearings, still be able to pass bills, and still be able to have their constitutional rights not withheld? So right now, that is actually what the big conversation is, and can we do this on a shortened schedule? I think what's going to be interesting is everybody's down there and has bills, 350 to be exact, still in the process. And so how are they going to be treated, and are they going to do first come, first serve for people like me who have clients that are down there with legislation, because the conversations personally via Zoom or via text message are a little bit different at the Capitol. And so obviously it's going to be a very interesting, we'll know more hopefully by the end of this week in preparation for the 18th to start up. I do know that they are going to have similar precautions as they do on every job site. I think we will have to, we will be temperature taken, gloves, masks. So it should be very interesting in the state building when the temperatures in the state rise with no air conditioning in the Capitol. I don't think anybody really wants to be in that building longer than they have to be at this time. So, but right now we're only given a bunch of what ifs. Obviously, we've heard calls that the speaker only wants to deal with bills that are free, friendly, and fast, so they can get through. So the JBC, the Joint Budget Committee, has been working diligently. I think they started up this last week to try to get to a portion of what they need for the budget and making some additional cuts. I know that Governor Polis has asked all the departments to make cuts for this year, and then what does it look like for next year. So there's going to be a lot of budget bills that are introduced. And so what we're worried about is potentially for all the contractors, obviously, is to keep watch out for local municipalities, because we obviously inspections, number of inspectors, permitting, all these things, right? If their budget's not there, where are they going to cut, and how does that long-term affect construction moving forward in Colorado?
Well, Jay, quick question on that specifically. Do you expect to see any state guidance on permitting and inspection to encourage consistency across jurisdictions?
That's a good question, and thank you. So I was on a conference call with Dora and the governor's office little before last week to try to provide some guidance as they're trying to move forward. And obviously, we've had a lot of recommendations from IEC, and those were submitted to the governor's office as it relates to things that are moving forward. On my call, one of the things that we stressed and the other contractors stressed was uniformity throughout the state. So we have contractors that have uniformity as it relates to permitting, as it relates to inspections, and for the state to give guidance. Now, one of the things that are really interesting in our state is we have state or cities that have local control, i.e. Denver, Fort Collins. There's some, a handful of them. So they can do whatever they would like. But what we had asked is, in the lack of guidance from the state, we see the municipalities tend to veer towards their own and then create what we call patchwork. And so I tried to emphasize with Dora and or the governor's office to provide guidance, even if they cannot instruct them, but to provide some guidance so there is some uniformity. So we're hoping that is done, and obviously that will be based on what level of resources each municipality has, but and technologies are willing to accept. And so I think that's going to be the key, because as we all know, this is something that no one's ever dealt with. And so how do remote inspections happen? How can we speed up the permitting process, right? Whether or not we're going to see less staff at the local level, and how does that affect it, right? And can that be overtaken by some automation in each individual county and in the state?
Okay. Thank you, Jay. I'd like to know if Kristin, Sam, you have anything to add to what Jay has talked about here a little bit. Sounds like it's a stay tuned. Things are going to evolve for sure.
And one thing that I did get, so the Department of Labor reached out to me and said that one of the things that are growing is the number of employees that are refusing to go back to work. What they have found is they make more money on unemployment than they do for the normal job. And so there is actually a website that they have created for employers to properly report employees that have refused to go back to work, knowing that they have, between the CARES Act addition to the unemployment, has made them, kind of question going back. And if an employer has offered you a job and you've rejected it, there has been more and more ask for those employers to report that to the Department of Labor.
Kristin, you've got something written all over your face.
Yeah, so I was going to let everyone know, we've talked about that for a couple weeks on this call. There's now like an easy button on, I think it's on the unemployment website, because that's where you need to report it. Because it, unfortunately, and I guess fortunately, they're not eligible for benefits if someone refuses a job. And so on the unemployment website, there's actually a button now that you can, go, press the button and go right into their website to report this issue, where if you've offered someone a job and they say, yeah, thanks, but no thanks, I'm going to stay at home while I'm getting my extra $600, because it is true. That, and we've heard that from a lot of people as well. I'm making more money now. So you do want to report that, because that, does cut off benefits. It's not something you want. I've seen any of you that do work in Wyoming put out letters to anyone receiving unemployment that said, if you decline a job, you will automatically lose benefits. They're, which isn't surprising. They're being pretty aggressive about it. So I'm glad to see Colorado taking some more steps that way too. So if you got any questions along those lines, let us know. But that is something you want to be on top of, because that's more than just a work refusal. That's, declining employment, which isn't what the unemployment system is designed for.
Yeah, so maybe this is a subject, well, we know it's a subject that we need to do a deeper dive into as more developments occur and information is made available. I think this one is both critical and somewhat troubling. You have employees that are absolutely refusing to return to work. Sam or Sam, anything else you all would like to add to that particular area? Sam Gluck?
I think we're pretty fortunate we have not had anyone refuse to come back to work. Obviously, we had a few that were a little bit more concerned than others, and some stayed home and we accommodated. Again, you're nothing without your people. So at the end of the day, you have that conversation and you figure out what holes they can plug until they feel comfortable and confident and the storm has passed. So that's been our experience, and it seems to have worked out well for us.
Does anybody else want to add? Sam Cooke.
Yeah, I'll just add real quick. As with any employment issue, documentation is your friend. Right? Documenting, your decision-making process, documenting why people may have been laid off or furloughed, or documenting when, what they have to say about returning to work will always put you in a better position if something like that gets disputed. There's plenty of insurance out there for employment-related matters, but as an insurance carrier, the only way we can really stand up for you as the employer is if you've got the documentation on your side. Otherwise, it's operating in a litigious state that is a little less kind to employers. So document.
So we're a bit over time. We can certainly run all the way to 9 o'clock, but I think we've covered a lot today. I'd like to ask Marilyn to wrap us up and talk about next steps and next week's forum.
Sure. So next week, we actually are going to switch a little bit to a bigger picture discussion around the economy in general. We have a representative from BOK Financial that's going to be talking about consumer confidence and returning to market, if you will. Kristin, I hope you also will be able to continue to be on with us. I think what I'm really seeing now is not only dealing with this unprecedented, unfathomable situation and getting a handle on it, but now I'm starting to see really specific logistical questions like the discussion around payroll bonuses and salary increases, and the very specific return to work policies, and the minute details of what this actually means for everyone moving forward. So I think those are the kinds of questions that we want to continue to field, because if you have them, someone else does. So if there's anything that is a specific topic for you, please let me know, and we will have the right person on the call. Again, we already know that we will be big picture talking about the economy, but we also know we've still got these individual situations and experiences that we'll need to grapple with. And the very first week, this was we're all in this together. We're still all in this together. And we hope that we'll be, I'm going to end this with another sailing example, Sam. Thank you for bringing that to the table. We will continue to navigate these waters together.
It's a wonderful way to end. And that's it for today, folks. I want to thank our subject matter experts, Sam, Kristin, and Sam. Pete, thank you for chiming in. All of you are incredibly valuable to this process, and even more so, each of you who are IECRM members and partners on this Zoom are, essential to us as we go forward to continue to try to serve your needs. So thank you, and we'll see you next week.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, tune in next week, 7:30. Thank you, Marilyn, for giving the updates, and everybody be safe out there. Look to us for any questions, and we'll try and get back to you as soon as possible. You'll receive communications about today's meeting very soon. So thanks again. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I've stopped the recording.
Awesome.
Thank you.